Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our derivation, what is sensiality? What is the base of sensiality? So we're going to start with the massive progress, which might sound funny considering it seems like we make a lot of progress every day, but the biggest renormalizations or the biggest insights are conceptual understandings. And so what is sense, right? We say it all the time, I have sense, I have senses. We said that specifically and explicitly throughout this derivation, but just what is common sense? Or more specifically, what is the linguistic representation of the generalization of sense? What is the quality of sense? And so, very naturally, empirically, people say ality at the end of any noun or at any, again, we're still not for the noun-verb chronology, we're almost there. But for our big conceptualization, how do we represent sense generally with linguistics? How do we generalize that word form and what does it mean intuitively, directly, and empirically? And so so why sensiality is not a correct word form is, I guess we haven't proven that, like why it's not a word, but it's not. And it's just, again, you can hear that sound, that phonetic sensiality. You still have that iteration element where if you just take the S, or even if you had a C there, because now that we have this chronology, C is more general than S. We have senses, and we spell sense, S-E-N-S-E. Again, it's one of these stabilized word forms with, again, profound empirical use. And so, but sensiality is not a correct linguistic representation. And now, right, the difference between 3 and 8 is 5. The difference between E and A is I. Again, explicitly worth pointing out that the literal spelling of 8 is E-I, and so it's literally like going on there. But you pronounce what we're focusing on right there in that containment statement is the sound, the phonetic, the base uniqueness of the phonetic, A, E, and I. And so the difference between 3 and 8 is 5. The difference between E and A is I. And so when we have sense, S-E-N-S-E, right, to stabilize that word form, we put an I, then an A, and then we complete the L-I-T-Y. We can't just put ality on there. And so we get sensiality, or sense generalizes to sensiality. And so, or not sensiality. Again, I literally just derived this, but trying to do it again, I try to do everything immediate. It doesn't really matter. But why do I have a T there? I already iterated it to a T, right? That obviously comes after the S, but I definitely have the word form of sensiality written. Again, we'll go through the actual derivation steps in order where I actually hit that, but I'll sensiality. And so, yeah, I found it here. Okay, so you just take, again, the spelling of sense, S-E-N-S-E, and well, we have this motivation from that containment statement. The difference between E and A is I. The way to stabilize that word form is to put I between E and A. And so we have S-E-N-S, generalize that E to an A, and then we have to put an I in front of it chronologically to stabilize it. So sense generalized is sensiality. And so then I iterated it to sensiality, which is, again, QRST, again, the next direct element in the English alphabet. This entire time we've been saying essential. It's just been another generalized form of sense. And so, again, conceptually, when you say essential, it's just an iteration directly of what you mean by sense. And so again, we gotta be like immediately almost done. But again, just trying to, again, walk you through all of the little nuance because this stuff moves pretty quick. And so, yeah, well, I guess we'll just get there, but we have conceptually, we have this word sense that we all use, and the correct linguistic representation of its quality, the quality of sense, is sensiality. And we have the stabilized spelling from our containment statement. The difference between 3 and 8 is 5. The difference between E and A is I. And so now just go through the derivation steps in order, and again, talk about the same kind of the big result, and because we progress farther as well. But that is the big conceptual progress. This entire time anybody has said essential is a direct form of sense. And that's the complete representation of sense linguistically. Another note, just watching, I'm on the previous episode, I was a little, when I said syllable, when I'm saying syllable most readily, it is this irreducible structure of sound. And then we put letters to represent syllables. And so sometimes I've said letter sloppily, then I've said syllable sloppily, but I put some edits on the screen. It should be clear enough. If you're just listening in, but if you're following the context, it's like, again, doing a 7-year calculation and then like dropping a negative sign every once in a while. It's not that big a deal. But going through the steps, but that is the big conceptual progress for sure. Because then again, is sense the base of sensorality? And so now we have to take sensiality, or sensiality iterates directly to sensiality with the T, and just show again this linguistic refining, which should be hopefully pretty soon, moving through our steps. Sensorality differentiates identity, right? It is what it is. Physically, that cools down, that differentiates. You have a personality, you go out into the world and interact, that differentiates. Sensorality differentiates identity. Identity is special. What is preservation to pronunciation? Sensorality preserves speciality. Again, to the overall preservation and pronunciation, we have irreducible meaning associated to sounds. We're all born into culture where this sequence of sound, da-da, mama, means something directly normalized by empirical evidence. Language is literal. Sensorality preserves speciality. Individuality is special. Duality speciates. Sensorality spectates. Spectating views. Spectacular is monumental. What is a moment to a mention? Sensoriality is sensoriality. So now back to, again, the motivation for this word form was directly from sensory, right? Sense, sensory, the way it's spelled, and then you just take off the letter Y representing the sounding and put the letter E, because E is E. And then sensoriality, the R-I-A-L-I-T-Y spelling. And this is where the motivation for this is kind of another big step leading up to the renormal. That's what we led with, the base of sense, what sensiality is what I called throughout this section of derivation, the fundamental theorem of logic. And so this is another huge step as well, though. But so we have sensory, take off the Y, put the letter E, and then put ality. And so you have sensoriality. And then is, and for the same reason, for sensoriality, we stabilize the same sequence of E, I, A. And so you have again, I don't even know if this has a right pronunciation, but reality is what I would get to. Rea, kind of like, again, the base of like rey for king in Spanish, but R-E-I-A-L-I-T-Y. The spelling will be on your screen. But that is a direct iteration. Does inversion switch directions? Again, this chirality in its completeness is already contained within the shape. You can't break, that's how shape is built, and letters are shapes, right? And so, but we write what most people would say is linearly, like in one direction. It's the only way you can move. And so how do we represent chirality with this quote unquote linear progression? Sensorality is sensoriality. Again, the same, going back to sensorality, our definable, finalizable thing, to that form, sensoriality. Spelling will be on your screen. Sensorality is reality, natural definition. But it's still just a pronunciation would be like reality, but I'm just giving you, because this is directly tied into the fundamental theorem of logic that we already articulated. But this is, again, why people have the name reed, or, again, the Spanish term for king, rey. But R-E-I-A is a dichotomistic pair. What is reality to seriality? So now back to, again, a serial number, right? That spelling, again, a direct step we've hit explicitly, but connecting that chunk, again, it's like some sort of, again, this radial expansion of syllability, or however chirality is represented in these letters. What is reality to seriality, because all we're doing is adding an S and then iterating the R. Direct iteration. Is seriality continuous? Again, like a serial number, that spelling. What is seriality to speciality? What is seriality to sphericality? Again, geometrically, sphericality contains speciality. Sensiality is spherical serial. That's a fun one, but that's spelled with like a serial number, and then the next step, sensiality is spherical serial. The direct conceptualization, you think of the morning food that is shaped like a sphere. Is cereal grocery? Are grocery cereal? Something again with this general function, right? We eat the booty like groceries, but just the word grocery is a very interesting linguistic term, and cereal is a very interesting linguistic term for food. But the direct conceptualization, sensiality is spherical serial, is complete. Time differentiates everything. But again, so I had restated the fundamental theorem of logic twice. Again, there was tons of progress. So differentiality is the opposite of generality. Conceptually, again, progressing, what is the opposite of general? Right? What is the opposite of specific? Some sort of chiral function where, again, it's the same thing differentiating itself. And we can show this, again, linguistically. We started off with the big result. Time differentiates generality, just all of it. Time differentiates geometry, just all of it. Sensiality is general geometry. So now we've logically derived the linguistic representation of geometry completely. Probably can't appreciate that, but that is true. Sensiality is generic serial. The exact sensiality is generic spherical serial. Sensiality is sore serial. So serious, sore serial. Sensiality, PG-13 warning, PG-13 warning, or maybe a little older. But sensiality is a soggy donut. What could that mean? A soggy donut is a sore torus. Again, connecting our geometrically derived great conceptualization of inversion, the inverted torus. If your butthole comes out of your butthole, that is inversion. A torus is a donut. A butthole is a donut. Again, right, a donut hole, if you go to Tim Hortons and you get a donut hole, they give you a sphere. But no, the hole is the absence, right? And so a torus is a donut. But a soggy donut is a sore torus is a much better presentation to be preserved for all of history. I am a scientist, what can I say? A torus is a donut. What is soggy to sore? Yeah, that's some good thought there. Sensiality is soggy. Sensiality is soggiality. Sensiality is saggy. Sensiality is saggiality. And so now that linguistic word form, again, direct iteration, is like the word form of Sagittarius, right? A Tarius is a torus. That's a direct linguistic iteration, geometrically. So now we have a saggy, sore torus in our generic spherical serial. That's inspiring stuff. Who could have derived such great logical connections? Sensiality is Sagittarius. Tarius, torus, ality. And so now, again, we can conceptually have understanding as to why ality is the generalizing thing. A is the first letter of the English alphabet. But again, time differentiates our chronological consolidation of science to what historically up into the point of the English alphabet, A comes first. It's the most general. All right, what's the first word? Aardvark. Arthur the Aardvark. But that is why ality is the generalizing thing for, again, naturally, empirically. What is a torus to a bonus? Consumerality is consumptionality. Direct iteration of sum, summation, another big term for all calculation. Censorship is optional. That is true, but again, direct iteration of the phonetic. Sensiality is optionality. An option is a choice. Make good options, Sean Carroll at Caltech, and Governor DeWine, and President Supreme Leader Donald. No one's making good choices. Moving along, it's a long episode, we made a lot of progress, but again, we make a lot of progress every day. Is sensation optional? Language is literal, sensiality is literal. So again, iterate, iteration, integration, literacy contains all of that conceptually. Sensiality is iteral. Sensiality is literature. The whole thing. The whole presentation of all of human history of literature. That's what sensiality is now. Literate literature. Sensiality is filtration. Sensiality infiltrates. Sensation is in space filtration. What is vibration to filtration? Sensiality is immediate. Censorship is mediation. What is mediation to vibration? Sensiality is immature. No, it couldn't be the sore, soggy, soft, torus, serial, generic spheres. Not Brad, not immaturity, oh no. Sensiality is mature culture. Sensation orders information. What is information to automation? What is an option to an opinion? Right, that's another, opinions are like what? Sore toruses. See, we're connecting the dots over here. An opinion is an onion. Natural definition, direct iteration. What is opinion to union? What is urge to urgency? What is urgency to agency? And if you're not in the great supreme land of the United States of America with our supreme leader Donald, and you didn't get the reference, there's a phrase that you say, an opinion's like an asshole, everybody has one, but as we've clearly derived, the sore torus is better than an asshole. Nice. What is urge to urgency? What is urgency to agency? We know where this is going. Sensiality is urgenticality. Look at that. You guys have agenticality, but I am more specific because I big brain. I have urgenticality. Priority urges. Sensiality is a priority surge. Price surge, I'm on Uber, I have to go watch the next sports game. Sports, go, sports. Sensiality is a priority surge. What is prime to priority? What is priority to potential? What is teasing to prying? What is prying to praying? What is thinking to sensing? Sensiality is sensuality. Yes, you bet it is. Again, this is where the direct word form of sensiality is produced. Sensuality is sensiality. And so now here what I did is just, again, we have to get the I in between the E and the A. Because, right, sensuality doesn't have that identity in it. And so I just started moving the syllables around, trying to get the E, and again, super trivial steps, but these are direct iterations, and that is a conceptual motivation leading up to the big realization that, again, essential. Sensuality is the general form of sense. But sensuality is sensuality. Sensuality is sensoriality. Sensuality is sensoriality. What is seniality to specialty? Again, that when you go from speciality to specialty, again, that sensorty or seniality is, again, directly derived from, we just dropped the sore. But again, directly just brute force rearranging the syllables of sensuality. Because again, realizing that, hey, we have this I in ality, but not in the word not between the E and the A. And so then that's when I just directly realized, again, just to generalize starting with the word sense, to generalize that, you have to produce sensiality. That S-E-N-S, you take the E, generalize it to A, you put the I before the A to be between E and A is I, and then the L-I, or the L-I-T-Y. Yeah. And so because again, that last I-T-Y is just it, and then the letter Y with the sound E. Right? It's just these analytical elements now. And so that is, again, the huge, anytime people say the word sense, the complete linguistic representation is sensiality with an S. And then it gets to with a T. Like, and literally you can't, it's hard for me to articulate the pronunciation in order. Because that's what differentiation does. That's what defining does, is you're mixing up the syllability. So it's not just one big, it's not the same sound. E. But that was again in order where that came from. Connecting this identity, the difference between E and A is I, directly to our word form sensiality. Sensiality is sensiality. Natural definition, direct iteration. Sense is sensiality. What is sensiality? To consensus. So now we've seen this geometric progression with tendency, contend. And we explicitly pointed that out yesterday. But this word form, sensus, right? This sensiality preserves the correct word forms. It completes the word family of the base sense. Now we just have to show the range, and then once we complete that, it gives us our definition for sensiality. But the big conceptual progress is what, all of it matters, but that's in the rapidity of the derivation that we do every day, meaning me. This is a big realization. But what is consensus? To focus? What do people focus on? What does sentience consensus to? What do people think about? Sensiality contends with consensus, and directly expanding. Fundamental theorem of sensiality. Sensiality senses, sensiality censors. Because, right, remember this whole time our motivation has been, my microwave is not a sensor with an S. We haven't articulated explicitly what is the complete generalization of sense. Right? The quality of sense is sensiality. And then sensiality censors, right? Censors are senses, right? So now that's that is direct consistency. Still not reduced. We are still not done. Terence Teao, we need to be done. Sensiality is sensuality. And so, again, that was just a direct, again, just the S to the T. I mean, I was wondering if there's any other in there, but nope. Again, it's just QRST. It's this, again, we're already in a form, right? We're already in the English alphabet you can't break that. I mean, that's a consolidation. You have to reproduce the environment you live in. Right, physicists? Right, guys? Well, come on, guys. The structure of language is real simple. But that is a natural definition, direct iteration, and it's complete conceptually. What we've been trying to say is what is sensiality conceptually is sensuality. And for whatever reason, I did directly just go from S-E-N-S to S-E-N-T. But again, just more specific, the more chronologically we go through the alphabet, the more definable it is. And so, conceptually, sensiality is sense. Generalized linguistically, sensuality. What is sensuality to speciality? Sensuality is essential. And so that's a natural definition, direct iteration. I actually think in my handwriting, I didn't mean to already iterate this to a T. Because again, I did, because that's the direct, I mean, when you get that essential, it's the direct syllability of essential, right? You don't have, essential doesn't have an S there. So that's why I did that. But right, that was our big renormalization, but it's the same thing, right? Essential this whole time has just been the general form of sense. So natural definition, direct iteration. Sensiality is common sense. Sensiality is common sensuality. Sensuality is common sense. Sensiality filters frequency. Sensiality is sentience. The whole thing. A sense is a frequency filter. Are senses emotions? Are emotions feelings? What is feeling to filling? Sensuality is finding feeling. Natural definition, direct iteration. I liked the sour, soggy, torus, spherical cereal better. But each step is a renormalization of what sensuality is. Sensuality is speciality. Sense is special. Fundamental theorem of logic, sensuality is the quality of sense. And so that directly connects this T and the S. What is quality to equality? So now again, right, is equality electric quality? No, it's this base E in this preserved word form. You can't reduce this irreducible base, this fundamental stability of 2, this inversion of E into A. And so, right, when we have real, right, that doesn't have a stabilizing I between it. Right? And so it's again this I, working this I in and out that we've said explicitly throughout this whole derivation, is this identity of stabilizing our definition. And so what is quality to equality, right? You have equations, comes from equality. The word is equality. What is quality to orality? Sensuality is the quality of orality. Natural definition, direct iteration, emphasizing even the geometry of the Q to the O, as well as the U, is an iteration or rotation even of the N, chop it in half, we get an R. Direct iteration, natural definition. Containing and progressing our whole logic, the whole thing. What is quality to essence? So I did want to include, I think this is just a wrong step, but again, if my handwriting, if I'm writing stuff down, it's like the same speed anybody else would write. So I wrote essence derives from sensuality. Again, trying to connect all of these things, we should be almost done. I mean, this big conceptual progress has got to be close. But just continuing on, essence derives from sensuality. I literally put a question mark, like not as a rhetorical question, Woodcock, but as in like immediately considering chronology, right? Because we have essence, right? Again, this word form now that we also use, but we've kind of, you could have asked, again, why does it have that C there, right? How do we go from sense, S-E-N-S-E, to essence, or again, any form of sense, S-E-N-C-E, or same thing with like dense. And now we have this direct chronological motivation and conceptual understanding. The C is more general. And so chronologically, I want to say, and then I immediately wrote, sense derives from essence, right? Life, again, still getting our direct order of like base to inversion, because sensuality and sensuality, again, are like inverses almost. Sensuality, speciality, we're showing some sort of direct iteration again, but now we've shown that with the letters. And so when we've made this conceptual difference of C into the S, when we're at this fundamental level of geometry, there's no assignment of meaning yet. And so we're showing this progression. We have to contain the logic within a sentence, but this is the connection of why C is more general in word forms than S. Essence, sense, our senses derives from essence. We couldn't sense things if things weren't in existence. Again, existence, right, is existence. And so that is huge. This is a massive, massive episode. Again, in the context of this derivation where we upload fundamental proofing every fucking day. Right? Because now we just ask the question, is sensuality the base of sensuality? Or what is its relationship? We have some sort of complete ability. Again, we're still just developing the right question to ask. That will have this self-containment and that will give us our working definition, which is still sensuality. Again, this overall form of the whole derivation, the whole proof, honestly, I don't even know what to say. It's just like, you guys just would never you'd have no idea how to structure this stuff, because again, it's still the self-containment of Brad's independent learning experiences. I've done this whole proofing completely up until the point where words have irreducible meaning, articulated in this proof, in this derivation from rhythm to algorithm when I was like 6 years old. Like before, literally before I was like forming memories. And so my whole life is this process. My whole life has been fucked. Not really the point. But I'm like referencing things like every single day of stuff that's not written down and it's not known analytically within the species. And so I have to like self-contain everything, literally. And so you guys don't know how like humongous of a jump up. Like if I had like 800 IQ points, I'd be fucking dead as shit. Like if I was not able to generate completion within mathematical proofing, which includes the axiomatization of physics, which includes the complete reduction of linguistics, which you guys don't even know what it is. You guys kind of say math sometimes, and then you guys are all arrogant, pathetic, privileged fucks. There was no chance if I don't get to completion, you guys understand any of this shit is real, because it's already differentiated. You already function on this analytical process by forming a fucking sentence. But this shows the direct iteration of the C and the S. The C is more general than the S. It's derivation. It's going to specificity. Which still conceptually poses, right, sensiality is the quality of sense, sensing, right, why do we put ing, right, why do we start with generality, right, so that's, I guess, why we start with a noun, and then we derive to verb, but vibes are the base. So we're still not completely done, but huge, massive, humongous progress, and then I did have one final thing, geometrically, what is 2s? And so my rights continue to be violated. It is profoundly and extensively illegal. Now that our concepts are in the right order, or at least again definitively still sticking with what we have done right now. We know definitively what the complete linguistic representation of sense is, and now we just have to connect sense to sensuality, consensuality, and we still have to talk about the birds and the bees a little bit more, sex. But again, geometrically, X is again way farther along the line in the ordinality of the alphabet, right? And so we're showing some sort of complete iteration from A to Z, which is a consolidation of all of information represented by all of history and science, which I've already done. Still cannot emphasize enough, this process is already done, which to the people watching this, all of this amount of logic and proofing has been done on these great universities' desks for, again, provably without question since 2018. And I want to say again, it's right around 8 years. I mean, it's an iteration limit. I'm deriving conceptualization in real time. But fun fact is I've lost in almost a decade of my life. Still live with my parents, fun stuff. Do not have a family of my own. My property's been destroyed. Everything I've attempted in the most earnest, genuine fashion has been absolutely obliterated. Nobody cares because, again, I live in the most disgusting society ever where we compete over nothing. Everybody has this 14-year-old mentality where the maturity doesn't exist within the species to understand, hey, we're torturing this guy. That's a bad thing. Well, here's all of science, and to my estate, sue everybody, press every charge, and pay me every fucking penny of damages that you owe me. And when you can't, well, I don't know, we're gonna have to figure something out. That is what I have for right now. We should be wrapping up very shortly. But I've said that like a million times, but this was huge conceptual progress. What is sense? What is the range of sense? Is sensiality. Sensiality. And I just immediately iterate the S to the T. But we should be hopefully wrapping up shortly. Regardless, that is what I have for now. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.